It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin in Nigeria, where the number of confirmed cases has risen from 36 to 40. The National Center for Disease Control, NCDC, says 3 of the cases were recorded in Lagos and 1 in the Federal Capital Territory, FCT. Meanwhile, Minister of Health, Osage Ehanire, says some persons who have contracted coronavirus are hiding. The minister said this at a press conference in Abuja on Monday. He said the federal government has to act fast to tackle the spread of the virus in order not to experience a similar challenge with China and Italy, the worst-hit countries in the coronavirus pandemic. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, CJN, Ibrahim Mohammed, has also ordered that all courts in the nation suspend judicial activities in order to prevent the spread of coronavirus. Mohammed gave the directive on Monday evening. However, he said matters which are time-bound would be treated. So there we have the judiciary making themselves heard, which is also really positive and encouraging because, you know, courts, it's quite difficult to maintain social distances. It can be quite full. So this is really the best option for everyone concerned in such an important public health issue. And as to that unfortunate fact of the matter, that some of those who are infected are hiding, we have to deal with the realities of stigmatization, of a lack of trust in the authorities, of the proliferation of fake news and people getting medical advice from social media and thinking, erroneously of course, that they can treat themselves at home. They cannot. So would like to encourage everybody who actually is exhibiting symptoms to come forward, get tested, and get properly treated.
Well, what the federal government has said is that, you know, there may be a situation whereby the federal government will be forced to call in the police and the military to assist with contact tracing, because we're told that there are over 1,300 persons out there who have refused to come forward to be tested, persons who are, you know, travelers who came into the country. And, you know, in the estimation of government, they clearly pose a risk, a threat, you know, to the survival of other persons. Government has also said that it may be forced to publish the names of those persons, to name them, so that, you know, the entire community can be aware that these persons need to submit themselves for testing, or they need to self-isolate. And if they are not self-isolating, they need to be called to order. But there are many other issues. Yesterday when we sat here, we had up to 36 cases, 35. Wow. Then overnight, I mean, Nigeria recorded its highest number of confirmed cases, up to 10 overnight. And that's frightening because, I mean, that was how it started in the United Kingdom. That was how it started in Italy, in Spain. You know, the numbers just kept increasing in those places. And I just hope that we're not facing a situation where Nigeria will become like Italy, or become like China, or become even like South Korea. And that's why you can see that every step must be taken. And from this point onwards, Nigeria must think ahead. It's a good thing that the courts have been shut down. It's a good thing that public servants, civil servants have been asked to stay at home. I mean, the entire country should be in a lockdown. From today now, you know, Britain, the United Kingdom is going to be effectively on lockdown. Yes. And that's the kind of drastic step, you know, that Nigeria also needs to take. The frightening part of it is that, do we have the infrastructure? The Minister of Health says we have 5 laboratories for testing. No, but you know we don't. Will those 5 laboratories be enough? No, they won't. Now, in the case of persons that die, is there a protocol in place that has been announced, and it should be announced, about how to handle the corpses of persons who die from coronavirus? Do we have designated burial grounds? And what do we do about people who live in these buildings you call face me, I face you? How is social distancing possible, for example, in a congested bungalow where, you know, there is like 8 rooms or 6 rooms, and everybody is just stepping on each other? It's a very frightening situation. You said you were anxious yesterday. I was. I can imagine how you feel this morning.
I actually feel a lot better this morning because yesterday I was in such a state. I really had to give myself a really good talking to and calm down and trust God. Yesterday was tough for me, and, you know, today I'm a lot better.
I know.
I'm glad to say.
It's all right. We'll all be fine at the end of the day, I hope.
Amen. Well, joining us now is our Rise business analyst, Rotus Odiri. So if we can, Arise analyst is not joining us now. What's the next story?
On any given day, crowds of people pass through Lagos's Murtala Mohammed International Airport. And on the day international flights are banned, nestled in between suitcases and passports, there's confusion, uncertainty, and anger.
The experience is tough for me, and I'm really annoyed. I already even keep my Emirates ticket aside to book another ticket from Etihad. But it's quite unfortunate. Unfortunately, I cannot travel today for no reason.
It's a last-minute trip, because the one we already planned, they canceled it because of this coronavirus. So we had to book another ticket. Yes, urgently for the last flight for today.
Despite the visible presence of passengers at the international terminal, some expect the numbers of domestic travellers to dwindle as authorities advise against non-essential travel.
What we have now is what we call ghost flight in the industry. Almost all the cabins are empty, and as states begin to lock down organizations, secretariat, schools and universities, you expect travel to reduce, coupled with the awareness and the increasing number of people falling victim to the COVID-19. So what you're saying to that is closing down officially today by order. I expect something like that to come in on the domestic market. To just come naturally, because as people are not flying, the airlines cannot keep flying aircraft emptied and guzzling fuel.
Panic and pandemonium, those are the themes here at Lagos Airport on Monday, the 23rd of March. This is the day in which international airports here in Nigeria will be closed to international flights as a precautionary measure to the COVID-19 outbreak. Naturally, there's been lots of uncertainty. People haven't been able to be completely clear on whether or not they'll be able to get onto their flights. Men who were having to spend money to buy new tickets because their tickets had either been cancelled or suspended. But there's also been mixed reaction onto whether or not this was a decision that should have been taken. On the one hand, you've got people who say that this was a preemptive strike, it's caused more disruption than calm. And on the other hand, there are people who said that they definitely do agree with the ban on international flights, and they're just hoping that they could be on one of the last flights out of Nigeria. With airports preparing for lockdown, we came to see how hospitals are gearing up. At the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital in Ikeja, consultant physician Dr. Adebowale Adekoya says it takes dedicated work to prepare hospitals.
This is a 600-bedded hospital, but the readiness does not, really amount to how many beds you have in your hospital. To get on top of this game, you have to be ready at all times. Monitoring the figures, not just locally, globally. Although, at the national level, we have measures now to make sure that we curtail and we make sure we limit how many people we interact with on the global scene. This is something that did not arise from Nigeria. And the response so far shows that we are not just ready, we are also monitoring to make sure that we get it tackled as it comes. So 600-bedded hospital, if it becomes a full-blown problem, cannot handle it anywhere in the world. Like in China, they beat 1,000-bedded hospital in weeks. They're still having deaths, they're still having increase in figure. But we're learning from other people's steps and mistakes.
Well, Adefemi Adesanya there, our Rice News correspondent at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos. Taking people's views about the planned closure of both the Murtala Mohammed International Airport and the International Airport.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now is Arise business analyst Rotus Adiri.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Rotus.
Yes. So today the MPC is concluding day 2 of its meeting, where they will be gathering to decide whether or not they're going to make any changes to their indices that they set, in order to try to juice up the economy. So the MPC meeting, the Monetary Policy Committee, is they're meeting about, I think, 6 times this year. So they already met in January on the 20th. That's day 1 of their meetings, 2 days each. March the 23rd, 24th, which of course is this period. They're going to meet again in May, July, September, and November. The backdrop against which the MPC is meeting is, of course, an economy that has been ravaged by the coronavirus. And so the decision that they're going to be making now is, do they increase the benchmark interest rates. Do they hold where they are, where things are right now? It's at 13.5%, or do they cut rates? As we know, the two things that the Monetary Policy Committee is dealing with right now is how to stabilize liquidity in order not for it to chase after foreign exchange, and also to stimulate the economy. We are aware of these policy measures that they put in place in order to stimulate the economy. The moratorium on loans, the 50 billion naira facility that they set up for pharmaceuticals and healthcare, the more than 1 trillion naira stimulus package that they put together for the agricultural sector, for pharmaceuticals, for manufacturing. All this has been to stimulate the economy. But you see, there's two different contrasting challenges that they're facing now. You are trying to manage liquidity. You're trying to make sure that that doesn't chase after USD, but also you're trying to stimulate the economy at the same time by putting more money into it. So how do you manage it? We know that the central bank has already faced FX challenges with regards to the coronavirus dropping demand and pushing oil prices low, which has affected their inflows. There were challenges that were faced at the investors and exporters window. It's our understanding that there was a net outflow of dollars to the tune of $1.5 billion in February and 1.8 in March. So the central bank has had to play in that window. By moving the exchange rates, which is what we've discussed on this show, from 366 to 380 at the INE window, and also from 307 to 360 at the official exchange rate, they've checked the FX. They've checked it. So now the question now is, do you now cut the 13.5% monetary policy rate in order to stimulate the economy? I think they'll hold rates. I think they'll keep things as they are. At the last meeting in January, what they did was increase the cash reserve ratio, CRR. The cash reserve ratio is the amount of money that banks are supposed to keep with the central bank. Hiked it by 500 basis points from 22.5% to 27.5%. So are they now going to reduce that? I doubt it. I mean, when they did increase it at that time, they were trying to check liquidity in order for banks in order to push the banks to lend more to the real sector under the loan and deposit ratio. But now, what did they do? They didn't anticipate that the coronavirus was going to affect things. So I think they'll hold. But in our headline on this day's newspaper yesterday, the assumption is that they'll cut rates. That assumption is based on the Monetary Policy Committee wanting to support the initiatives that the central bank has already put in place, which we put on our screen, the moratorium, the loans. By cutting the interest rate, it signals that they are supporting those initiatives. But then the balance is, again, by cutting rates, you spoil liquidity, and that same liquidity, you don't want it to go and chase USD. But they've checked USD by moving the exchange rate. So it's all up in the air. I mean, one thing I don't think they'll do is hike rates. By increasing rates, you tighten things, and then that's not good for the economy. So do they hold? Do they cut rates? I think that they'll hold, but the consensus is that they might cut a bit. We'll see what.
Opinion is clearly divided. Yes. There are persons who think that the Monetary Policy Committee may follow the example of central banks across the world and decide to do the same thing and cut rates. However, since 2016, the Central Bank of Nigeria has not been using the Monetary Policy Committee that much to do so much. It's been using other policies to see how it can stabilize the economy. But Nigeria is in a very critical moment right now, given the effect of COVID-19. It's not just to stimulate the economy. I think the Monetary Policy Committee will also be looking at how to hold inflation down and how to prevent Nigeria from slipping into a recession. But there are too many, omissions within the basic parameters at this time. For example, our foreign reserve, is so low, is so down. Now, if you go and cut rates, what happens? Do you have the foreign reserves to back it up? But whatever the Monetary Policy Committee comes up with, the point I made yesterday about the fiscal side is also very important. Fiscal policy. We don't see as much enthusiasm or activity from the fiscal policy side because both have to be properly coordinated for us to have the right framework to address the challenges that we face.
Well, thank you, Rotus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rotus.
We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be talking to our sports analyst, Aaron Akirejala. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show. Joining us now is Aaron Akirejala with sports headlines. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, Tunde.
Good morning,
Radiant on a very wet Tuesday, I must say.
Really wet. Miserable weather.
Extremely wet, extremely wet. Well, all right, Doctor, good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Yes, certainly there's been talk about the impact of coronavirus on several aspects and spheres of life, and one that was almost inevitable and was just being pushed forward finally has actually broken. Yesterday evening, it has actually been brought to light that finally the IOC, that we're talking about the International Olympic Committee, have now listened to voices of reason, and they have postponed the 2020 Summer Olympic Games that was to be held in Tokyo, Japan. As a matter of fact, indications of this actually came earlier when the Prime Minister of Japan, talking about Shinzo Abe, finally said that they are now looking at probably pushing the Olympics to a further date. We're not sure yet, but the date that is being touted is 2021. And not only is it not because certainly there were a lot of backlash from the Australian Olympic Association who were boycotting it, Canada, and also we heard that the Team GB were supposed to meet today and also signal the fact that they're going to pull their athletes out of this. And right now, the beautiful thing is the Olympics has been postponed because athletes were always clamoring that because of the constraint of the coronavirus, they will not be free to train as much as they want to. And you need athletes to hit peak performance at this time if they're to perform very well in the summer. And that cannot happen right now with what is going on in the world. So it only makes sense. I know that there are talks about the fact that since the Olympics has set Japan back with at least $12 billion, they are claiming that they still want to go ahead, but we're happy that finally the mountain pressure has actually yielded some kind of result.
I do feel for Japan. This is the second postponement, isn't it?
Yeah.
In their history.
Yeah.
Whenever the Olympics goes to Japan, something happens. But this is the only thing to do. It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer, I must actually say.
Well, I mean, I think it's good that at last reason has prevailed, because you know that the torch had already been lit in Greece, and at a point, Japan and the International Olympics Committee, were both insisting that the Olympics would go on. This is very unusual times, and it's good that everyone realizes that and are taking unusual steps to address this global challenge that we all face.
And very important now, right now.
What is the cost in terms of cost? I know the most important thing is human lives, is survival, but, what are the implications?
The implications are far-reaching because because just right now we are hearing that some other athletic events that are supposed to take place in 2021 have already signaled that they're going to actually free up that space for the Olympics to be held. But the Olympics is not like a football event or maybe a rugby event or a basketball event. Since it's a multi-event, multi-sports event, because you have taekwondo, you have swimming, you have karate, you have football, you have all this. Qualifiers need to happen, and there's a build-up to the Olympics. And the complexity of that is what the IOC will have to now figure out between now and next year. Because people have started qualifying already. People have started training, because the Olympic doesn't just happen overnight. If you want to attend the Olympic is for peak performance. Yeah. If you do not measure up, it's unfortunate. So the question now is this: those that have actually played all this to this extent and have trained, what now happens to them? They have to now go back and probably hope to still try to raise their level again next year. But let's see what happens, not to talk about all the infrastructure that Japan has put in place for this Olympics, the things that they've actually deferred to allow the Olympics hold this year. And now, next year again, they'll have to put Tokyo on lockdown.
Do you have another story in 20 seconds?
Yeah, quickly before we go.
Well, you have just about 20.
Let me just quickly before we go. There has been spate of death and a series of unfortunate events happening in the Nigerian league. Of course, Ifeanyi George, over the course of the week on Sunday, passed away. But the good news that is coming from this particular story, that was his car that was actually reduced to rubble on Sunday, is the fact that they say the club has released a statement stating that this player is actually being insured and his family will get a life insurance on he and two other players that were involved. So, which is actually good news. But I must actually say a series of bad events, which actually includes Eyimba's player, Eyimba International Dayo Ojo, was also kidnapped. They demanded 20 million naira for he and an Abia Comet player. At the moment, too many things are happening in the Nigeria football scene that needs to be addressed. They might not be as a result of administrative lapses, but just too many events. Too many events.
Well,
having two people...
It's good to see that there is insurance in place, but
yes.
More importantly, I think that accident should be investigated. What exactly happened? I know that the state of the road is very bad, but if there has been, some kind of negligence or foul play, all of that must be exposed and, pursue to a logical conclusion.
We'll still be following the 20 million naira they put on those boys, talking about the Abia Comet and the Eyimba boys.